There are 3 ways to survive in a ruined world. Now, I have forgotten a few, but one thing is certain. The fact that you who are reading this now will survive. 3 ways to survive in a ruined world. A web novel platform filled the screen of my old smartphone. I scrolled down and then up again. How many times have I been doing this? Really, this is the end. I looked again, and the complete was unmistakable. The story was over. I have been steadily reading this novel since the 3rd year of middle school. Author's words, thank you so much for reading Ways of Survival up to here. I will come back to you with an epilogue. The epilogue still remains. Then the next chapter is really the last one. From the end of childhood to adulthood, it had been done over a huge period of 10 years. There was a mixture of despondency that a world was coming to an end along with a sense of satisfaction. I opened the comment box of the last message and rewrote the sentence several times. Kim Dokja, writer, thank you for everything in the meantime. I am looking forward to the epilogue. An average of 1.9 hits per chapter. An average of 1.08 comments. This was the average popularity index of Ways of Survival. The number of views for the first chapter was 1,200, but it fell to 120 for the 10th chapter, and then 12 for the 50th chapter. By the time it was the 100th chapter, it was only 1. I was overwhelmed by the feeling I got when I saw the numerous 1 that appeared next to the list of chapters. In some cases, there was a 2, but it was likely someone pressing the wrong button. Thank you. The author published a novel with more than 3,000 chapters with just 1 hit per chapter over a period of 10 years. It was truly a story just for me. I wanted to give a donation to the writer, but I couldn't afford it because I was a salary worker barely able to make a living. Then I received a notification that a message has arrived. TLS 123, thank you. It took me a while to grasp the situation. TLS 123, I was able to complete it to the end thanks to you. I also won the competition. I couldn't believe it. Ways of Survival won a competition. Kim Dokja, congratulations. What is the competition? TLS 123, you won't know it because it is an unknown competition. I wondered if he lied because he was ashamed, but I wanted it to be true. Perhaps I really didn't know. It might be a bit hit on other platforms. I was a little sad, but it was good to have an excellent story spreading. TLS 123, I would like to send a special gift to you as a thank you. It is thanks to my dear reader that this story has come into the world. I gave the writer my email address as he asked. There was no reply from the author afterward. I logged out of the site. Then I felt the pessimism sink in later. The author left without a reply after he succeeded. My admiration turned into petty jealousy. What was I so excited for? In any case, it wasn't my novel. Will he give a gift certificate? It would be good if it's for 50,000 won. At that time, I was thinking naively. I didn't know anything about what would happen to the world the next day. My name is Dokja, Kim Dokja. My father gave me that name to be a strong man by myself. However, thanks to the name my father gave me, I turned out to be just a normal single and lonely man. My hobby was reading web novels on the subway. Then I'll go on my smartphone. In a noisy subway, I raised my head reflexively. A pair of curious eyes were staring straight at me. They belonged to an employee from the Human Resources team, Yu Sanga. Hello. Are you going home from work? Yu Sanga sat down soon as the seat next to me became vacant. A subtle scent came from her shoulders, making me nervous. Do you normally take the subway? Come to think of it, this was the first time I'd met Yu Sanga on a subway train. There were rumors that Yu Sanga had men from the company driving her home every workday. Yet unexpected words came from Yu Sanga's mouth. Someone stole my bicycle. Bicycle? You commute by bike? Yes, I have a lot of overtime these days and seem to be lacking exercise. It is a bit annoying, but it is worth doing. Aha, I see. Yu Sanga smiled. Looking closer at her, I could understand the feelings men held toward her. However, it was none of my business. Every person had a genre of life, and Yu Sanga was someone who lived a genre different from myself. After the awkward conversation, we looked at our phones. I opened up the novel app I was reading on before while Yu Sanga. By the way, what is Dokja SSI looking at? Yu Sanga's gaze was fixed on the LCD screen of my smartphone. Is it a novel? Yes, well, I am studying Korean. Wow, I also like novels. I haven't been able to read lately because I don't have time. It was surprising. Yu Sanga liked reading novels. What writers do you like? You won't know even if I say their names. I've read a lot of novels. Who are the authors? At this time, it was really hard to say that I read web novels as a hobby. I glanced at the title of the novel in the app. Author, Sing Shangshong. I couldn't say that I was reading The World After the Fall by Sing Shangshong. It is just a fantasy novel. That, well, like the Lord of the Rings. Yusanga's eyes widened. Lord of the Rings. I've seen the movie. The movie is good. The silence continued for a moment. I hated to admit it, but the sight of Yusanga talking was wonderful. It was like the world's spotlight was shining down on only one person. If this world was a novel, the protagonist would be such a person. In fact, it was the inevitable result. I hadn't tried, but Yusanga made an effort. I just read novels on the internet, while Yusanga studied hard. It was natural that Yusanga would become a full-time employee and that my contract would be terminated. I braced my mind and stared straight ahead. A boy was sitting in the seat opposite me on the train. He was 10 years old or so. The boy held an insect collecting net as he sat next to his mother, laughing happily. What if I had a different life from now? I mean, what if my life genre was different? Kim Dok. If the genre of my life wasn't realism but fantasy, could I be the protagonist? The genre of my life was obviously realism. Dokja has a solo life. What? I am just someone like that. In this genre, I wasn't a protagonist but a solo person. The life of a solo. Yusanga had a serious expression on her face. However, I waved my hands to show it was really okay. I didn't know why, but this person was really worried about me. Maybe because she was part of the personnel department. Everything had returned to normal, but strangely, my scrolling of the novel didn't go well. Maybe it was because I realized the weight of reality that I couldn't scroll down. At that time, a notification appeared at the top of my smartphone. It was from the author of Ways of Survival. I opened the mail. My novel will become paid from 7 p.m. This will be helpful. Good luck. I checked the time. It was 6:55 p.m. I had exactly 5 minutes before the novel became monetized at 7 p.m. Then I opened up my list of preferred novels in the app. Since I was the only reader, I should leave a congratulatory comment and give strength to the author. However, the work doesn't exist. I tried typing Ruin several times in the search box, but the result was the same. The bulletin board for Ways of Survival had disappeared without a trace. It was strange. Had there ever been a case of a novel being deleted without notification when it was going to be monetized? At that moment, the subway lights turned off and the inside of the train became dark. The subway train shook loudly and let out a metallic sound. It caused Yusanga to scream and grab my arm. Then I heard the sound of other people getting stirred up. Yusanga gripped my arm so tightly that I paid more attention to the pain in my left arm than the sudden stop. It took a dozen seconds for the train to stop fully. Then I heard confused voices coming from everywhere. In the dark, 1 or 2 smartphone lights turned on. Yusanga still held my left arm tightly as she asked, what is going on? I pretended to be unconcerned. Don't worry, it isn't a big deal. Is that so? Yes, it is probably a disturbance from a suicide. The engineer will soon make an announcement. As I finished speaking, I heard the engineer's announcement, telling all passengers on the train. The loud surroundings became calm. I sighed and opened my mouth. See, it isn't a big deal. Now an apology will air and the power will come back on. What is this? A bright light flashed from the front of the subway train. There was a loud drumming sound followed by a pop. Something was heading this way in the darkness. It was just a coincidence that I saw the clock at this moment, 7 p.m. It felt like the world was stopping. Then I heard a voice. The main scenario has started. This was the moment the genre of my life changed. The stopped subway train, the dark room. These details gave me a sense of déjà vu. The subway had stopped before, but it was rare. Even so, why? I remembered the familiar words from a novel. But it was ridiculous. Wasn't it impossible? At this moment, the door of car 3807 opened wide, and the electricity returned. Yusanga muttered by my side, "Dokibai." My head was ringing. I trembled uneasily as the novel I knew and the reality before me overlapped. With 2 small horns and wearing a small straw mat, the strange and fluffy creature was floating in the air. It was too strange to call it a fairy, too evil to call it an angel, and too tranquil to call it a demon. Thus, it was called a Dokibai, and I already knew the first thing the Dokibai would say. And a hashut. And a hashut. Fiction and reality overlap precisely. What is this? Augmented reality. Amidst the chattering people, I was thrown into another world alone. This was unmistakably a Dokibai, the very Dokibai that opened the door to tragedy for thousands of lives in Ways of Survival. It was Yusanga's voice that broke me out of my thoughts. It sounds vaguely like Spanish. Should I talk to it? I was a bit taken aback and asked, "Do you know what that is?" It was at this time that I heard the correct pronunciation of Korean. Does this sound good? I had a hard time because the Korean patch didn't work. Everyone, can you hear my words? As a familiar language was being spoken, I could see people's expressions relax. The first one to step up was a big man in a suit. Hey, what are you doing right now? Huh? Are you filming? I have to go because I have to quickly get to an audition. He seemed to be an obscure actor since his face was unfamiliar. If I were a casting director, I would have picked him out for his brimming ambition. Unfortunately, the presence before him right now wasn't a director. Auditions. That's right. This is also an audition. Haha, there was a shortage of data. I just entered when it was monetized at 7 p.m. What? What are you talking about? Now, all of you, relax in your seats and listen to me. From now on, I will tell you something very important. My chest was becoming stuffy. What? Quickly get off the train. Somebody call the captain. What are they doing without the cooperation of the citizens? Mother, what is that? A cartoon. There was no doubt about it. This was the development I knew. I didn't want to be mixed up in this, but there was no way. The people present wouldn't listen to the small and cute-looking CG creature. The only thing I could do was stop Usanga, who was trying to get up from her seat. I closed my eyes slowly as the Dokibai's eyes turned red. Something burst, and the subway became silent. There was a big hole in the forehead of the unknown actor who had to go to the audition. The man who had spoken several times collapsed on the spot. There was a cracking sound once again. This time, it was the person talking about the captain. It isn't a dream. It isn't a novel either. 1, 2. Blood sprayed into the air as the heads of some people started to burst. They were all the people who had protested against the Dokibai, as well as the ones who screamed or went wild. Those who caused the slightest fuss had a hole in their heads. Suddenly, the subway became a bloodbath. This isn't the reality that you know. Do you understand? So everyone shut up and listen to me. More than half the people present here died. Blood and body pieces filled the subway. Now, the people didn't scream. Like primitive apes in front of a powerful predator, everyone just watched the Dokibai with terror. I was surprised and held tightly onto the shoulder of Usanga, who was hiccuping. This was real. The strange message which entered my ears, the Dokibai had appeared in front of me, and the train car that had become a bloodbath. Everyone, your lives have been nice so far. Isn't that right? In the special needs seating area, an elderly grandmother met the eyes of the Dokibai. You have been living too long for free. Isn't life too generous? You were born and paid no price for breathing, eating, pooping and breeding. You really live in a good world. Free. No one in the subway lived for free. The people strived to make money in order to survive, and they rode the subway on the way home from work. Yet at this moment, no one disputed the Dokibai's words. But now the good days are over. How long can you continue living for free? If you want to enjoy happiness, it is common sense to pay a price. Isn't that right? The gasping people couldn't answer. Then at that time, someone carefully raised their hand. Do you want money? I wondered what type of person could speak in the middle of this situation. But surprisingly, I knew his face. Usanga SSI. Isn't that department head Han of the finance team? Right? There was no doubt. He was a typical parachute in the company and the number one person newcomers avoided. It was Han Myungo, department head of the finance team. Why was this man riding the subway? I will give you money. Take it. Please note that I am a person like this. Department head Han pulled out his business card as people cheered him on. It was the atmosphere of a savior fighting against terrorists. How much do you want? A big one? Or two? He was offering a sum that was overly large for a department head of a subsidiary company. There was a rumor that Han Myungo was the youngest son of the leader of the affiliate company, and now I thought it might be true. I couldn't carry that many checks in my wallet. That's right. The cash I have right now isn't much, but I can give you anything if you let me out of here. Money? Good. A plant fiber that many humans mutually agree on. The department head's expression brightened. It was an indeed, money is everything expression. How pitiful. Now, this is all I have. At the next moment, flames appeared in the air, and the checks in the department head's hands burned up. Department head Han let out a scream. That paper has no value in the macrocosm world. If you do this one more time, I will blow away your head. Fear once again spread on the faces of the people present. It was easy to read what they were thinking because it was just like the novel. What the hell will happen now? Only I knew what was going to happen in the future. Phew, the debt is piling up during the time when you are noisy. Well, yes, rather than explain it 100 times, isn't it quicker for you to make money yourself? The Dokibai's horns rose like they were antennas, and its body floated to the ceiling of the train. A moment later, a message rang out. The constellations have entered. A small window emerged in front of everyone's blank eyes. Plus, main scenario number 1, proof of value. Category, main. Difficulty, F. Clear conditions, kill 1 or more creatures. Time limit, 30 minutes. Compensation, 300 coins. Failure, death. Plus, the Dokibai smiled faintly as it became transparent and disappeared into the next space. Then, good luck everyone. Please show me an interesting story. People reacted differently after the Dokibai disappeared. Some people tried to get out of the train while others called the police. Yusanga belonged to the latter group, I said, staring straight into Yusanga's unfocused eyes. Yusanga SSI, have you ever played the game that the development team made? A game where the world is destroyed and only a few people survive. Huh? What do you say? Think about it. We are in a game right now. Yusanga silently licked her lips. Game? It is simple. Don't hesitate to do as I tell you. Understood. What should I do? Stay still. Finally, I slowly controlled my breathing. I too needed time to properly accept all of this. The descriptions that existed only in the novel were now unfolding right before my eyes. The Dokibai stretched out its antenna. The bodies scattered like trash in the carriage. The bloodied office worker shaking. An old lady groaning in her seat. I watched every scene intently. It was like Neo in the Matrix, who suspected reality, observing, questioning, and then eventually being convinced. I had to admit it. I didn't know the reason why, but there were no doubts about it. Ways of survival had become a reality. Let me think. How should I survive in this new world? Come on, everybody. Everybody calm down. Start breathing calmly. Someone stepped forward exactly 5 minutes after the Dokibai disappeared. He was a sturdy man with short-cut hair, one head taller than the average height. Are you calm yet? Please stop your actions and pay attention to me for a moment. The people sobbing or making calls stopped. Once everyone's eyes were gathered on him, the big man opened his mouth again. As you know, in the event of a national disaster, small disturbances can cause large human casualties. That's why I will now control the situation. What? Who are you? Some people belatedly recovered and strongly resisted the world control. Then the young man pulled a government official card out of his wallet. I am currently an army lieutenant serving in the 6502 unit. Some people's faces became relieved. He is a soldier. However, it was too early to be relieved. I just received a message from my unit. People gathered in front of the soldier's smartphone. I was able to read the contents without difficulty because I was near it. A level 1 national disaster situation has occurred. All troops gather quickly. I could hear gulps all around me. It was a national disaster situation. I wasn't surprised because I had already expected this. In fact, I was surprised because of something else. Army Lieutenant Lee Hyun-sung. That Lee Hyun-sung was this man. I knew who he was. It was the first time actually seeing his face, but his name was clear in my head. He was one of the main supporting actors of Ways of Survival. Steel Sword Lee Hyun-sung, a character from the novel, had appeared. Now I really had to acknowledge the situation. Soldier Nim. What is happening? I have been trying to contact my unit, but the Blue House. What is the Blue House doing? Please contact the president quickly. I'm sorry, I am just an ordinary soldier and don't have a hotline to the Blue House. Then why are you taking control? For the sake of the safety of all citizens. The Prime Minister is making a speech. It is really a level 1 disaster. Yusanga turned her screen toward me. Dr. SSI, look at this. There was no need to enter a search term. It was because the first result for all portal sites was Prime Minister's speech. Of course, I already knew the content of the video. To all my fellow citizens, unidentified terrorists are currently active in an unspecified number of areas, including Seoul. The contents of the speech were simple. The current government would mobilize all means and methods to fight the terrorists, and there would never be any negotiations. Thus, everyone should confidently continue with their lives. I hadn't thought much of it when I read the novel, but now I was a bit shocked when hearing those words. Terrorism. Yes, that would be more comfortable. But where is the president? Why is the Prime Minister making the speech? The president has already been hit. What? Really? I'm not sure. Shit, then it is fake. Of course, I knew it wasn't a fake comment. People dropped their phones as gunshots were heard from all over. It originated from their smartphones. There was a loud sound, and blood filled the screen. After a moment, people held their breaths as they realized what had happened. The Prime Minister had died. His head had exploded in real time. There were several more sounds like gunfire before the screen became silent. The next thing that appeared on the screen was a Dokibai. Everyone, I've told you already, this isn't a game like terrorism. People were at a loss for words as their mouths gaped open like dumb goldfish. Do you still not understand? This won't do. Do you still feel like this is a game? It felt so ominous because his tone was so relaxed. Subconsciously, I made a fist using all my strength. Haha, according to the data, the people of this country are very good at games. So, why don't I try raising the difficulty? Up. A huge timer appeared in the air. At the same time, it started decreasing rapidly. There are 10 minutes remaining. If the first killing doesn't occur within the next 5 minutes, all lives in that carriage will be wiped out. What is this? Is it a joke? Didn't you hear the message just now? Hey, didn't you hear it? Soldier Nim, what do we do now? Why isn't the police coming? Everyone, calm down and listen to me. The words of the Dakibai caused the situation in the carriage to become so severe that Lee Hyun-sung couldn't fix it. I could feel Yu Sanga gripping my collar tightly. Lee Hyun-sung, a supporting character, had already appeared. So, why hadn't he emerged? According to what I knew, I should have seen him by now. There is a murder back there. A scene from the 3907 train car could be seen through the aisle window. The complexion of the killer in that carriage was white. We have to keep them out. Don't let anyone in. People held tightly to the iron door, but it wasn't necessary. The enemy wasn't there in the first place. Along with this message, people were thrown back from the iron door like they had hit a transparent barrier. What is this? Once again, the voice of the Dakibai rang out. Haha, there are some places that are quite fun while other places haven't started yet. Okay, this is a special service. I will show you what will happen if nothing occurs in the next 5 minutes. A giant screen appeared in the subway. The place that appeared on the screen was a classroom. Girls in their navy blue school uniform were shaking. An ominous beeping sound was heard. Then the high school girls started to scream. Paid settlement will begin. Once the announcement ended, the heads of the high school girls sitting in the front row exploded. One by one again. More and more heads exploded. The high school girls screamed and ran toward the classroom doors or windows. Cleaning tools broke and nails were torn out, but the doors didn't open. Then a high school girl strangled her friend, who died with a groan. After a while, the only thing that remained on the screen was the last schoolgirl looking around. Hashbay 23515 channel. Deepong Girls High School, Year 2 Class B survivor Lee Jae-hai. The figure of the girl on the screen disappeared. Then the Dakibai asked, "How is it?" Interesting. The Dakibai spoke with a smile, but people weren't looking at the screen anymore. The people who made eye contact were gradually moving away from each other. Shit, what is this? Even Yu Sanga released her hold on me. However, she didn't move away from me. Both my hands were freed, and I turned on my smartphone. Why was that guy still not showing up? There was a mixture of information that I knew from the novel and information that I didn't know. The only way to break through this situation was to read Laws of Survival again. However, where else could I find the novel? The novel wasn't popular enough to be shared illegally. No, wait a minute. I was stunned for a moment as I saw the notification on my smartphone. Perhaps, no, I was confused the moment I opened the mail attachment. The file extension was TXT. The gift he sent me was a copy of his novel. All survivors of Ways of Survival had exclusive attribute and skills. I quietly said attribute window in my mind. I needed to know the attribute that I received. What? I once again tried to call out attribute window, but the result was the same. It was absurd. There was something like this. If I couldn't use the attributes window, I couldn't know what attributes or skills I have. Knowing oneself and one enemies meant being invincible. But this was a situation where I didn't even know myself, let alone the enemy. After staring into space for a while, I gave up and decided to read the text that the author gave me. I didn't know what the attribute is, but it took me less than a minute to read the first act of Ways of Survival thanks to the attribute effect. I found it. The place where my finger stopped was the beginning of the work, where the main character was doing some action in the train scene. A chill went down my spine and I had to read the passage again and again. The reason for my discomfort was soon revealed. 3707. I reflexively checked the number of the carriage I was riding. 3807. The carriage I was on right now was behind the carriage that the protagonist was riding. My hands faintly shook. Wait a minute. How many people originally survived this carriage? He looked through the blurred window at the 3807 carriage. It was already too late. It was inevitable. Anyway, only 2 people survived in that carriage. And I already knew who those 2 people were. I raised my head and looked blankly at Yu Sanga. Maybe this woman would die. Me as well. Dr. SSI, shouldn't we stop this? Something was starting in the place where Yu Sanga pointed. It was groaning. A young man was crouching down in front of the elderly woman. Shit, I'm in a bad mood and this old lady keeps whining and groaning. Won't you shut up? The young man was a male student who had been leaning against the entrance. He was thin and had dyed white hair. His name was written on the badge attached to his uniform. Kim Nam-woon. It was a name that I knew. Only Lee Hyun-sung and Kim Nam-woon survived in that carriage. It doesn't matter. They are the only 2 I need anyway. Didn't I tell you to shut up? The agitated Kim Nam-woon grabbed the grandmother's collar. The grandmother's powerless legs staggered. Kim Nam-woon's palm moved through the air. Slap, slap. In normal times, somebody would run to stop this. But now nobody was moving. It wasn't long before the slaps changed to punches. I could hear the sound of a hard fist hitting flesh. Some of the men around Kim Nam-woon hesitated, but none of them wanted to go forward. Surprisingly, the first person to act was Han Myung-go. Young me, treating an elder like this. However, all he got in reply was a voice mixed with scorn. Mister, do you want to die? What? You still don't understand the situation. What bullshit is this brat saying? Kim Nam-woon only laughed at the cursing Han Myung-go. He pointed to the ceiling of the subway carriage with his finger. Can't you see that? On the ceiling, a holographic screen was playing. It wasn't just train carriages or Deepong High School. It was a live video of people dying all over the country. Kim Nam-woon continued speaking. You still don't understand. The army isn't coming to rescue us, and somebody must die. What are you saying? We have to choose a person to die. Han Myung-go wasn't able to answer. The hairs of his exposed wrist were standing up. Of course, I know what you are thinking. You have to kill your fellow countrymen to live. It is something only sons of bitches will do. But you know, it is a force beyond our control. We will die if we don't kill. Who will blame us? Are you going to die in the end because of your morals? Think carefully. The world you have known so far has just ended. Han Myung-go's shoulders trembled. A new world requires new laws. Kim Nam-woon, a young man who adapted to the world of ways of survival the fastest. Kim Nam-woon turned around and resumed punching the grandmother. This time, nobody stopped him. Han Myung-go, the other men, even Lee Hyun-sung. The soldier's fists were trembling as he stared into the air with a lost expression. Maybe he had also made a decision. Sigh, it is hard to kill. Are you doing to just watch? Do you want to fall behind? People trembled at Kim Nam-woon's words. Their facial expressions were as easy to read as the sentences in a cheap novel. If there is no killing in 5 minutes, everyone in this carriage will die. People's eyes were changing. If the grandmother doesn't die, we will die in 5 minutes. The most primitive eyes that a living creature could have. Yes, this bastard is right. If we don't do this, everyone will die. The first man rushed towards Kim Nam-woon. He kicked at the old lady who had collapsed and was curled up. Have you forgotten? Someone must die, so we can live. Oh fuck, I don't know. The second and third. The people standing aloof from the grandmother. The cowardly men who had been lingering. The university student filming this with their phone. The mother of the child and Han Myung-go. They all lynched the grandmother, aiming for her death. Die quickly. They were like guards cooperating for the death penalty. Like the guards pulling the lever at the same time so they couldn't tell who killed the prisoner. These people passively kicked and punched the grandmother. And I was watching all of this. I was standing by, like someone watching what happened in another world. The grandmother, whose name I didn't know, was someone who wasn't meant to live. In the original scenario, the grandmother died. So, it wasn't a sin to observe that death. At that moment, Yu Sanga got up. You will be killed. I reflexively grabbed her. I told you not to move. The arm I was holding was shaking. Yu Sanga made tight fists in an attempt to hide her trembling. I know. Yu Sanga Sasai will die if you go now. Yu Sanga's eyes were shaking with fear. Even so, I realized it. Despite the genre of the story changing, some people still shone brightly. However, the person who could change this story wasn't Yu Sanga. Yu Sanga wasn't the protagonist of this world. But, do as I say, just this once. I won't interfere after that. After forcibly putting Yu Sanga back in her seat, I took a deep breath and turned around. I straightened my back and shook as I breathed out. I slowly loosened my ankles and wrist. In fact, it was a little early to come forward. This wasn't my plan originally. Dokja Sasai. I didn't answer her call as I looked at the people. The people intent on assaulting the grandmother. I wasn't still because I was afraid or Kim Nam-woon and the people, nor did I consent to their inhumanity. I was just waiting. It was for the moment I had to move. An explosion filled my ears and the train shook. People cried out. Smoke rose from the front right corner of this carriage. It had started. He had moved. I kicked off from the ground as hard as I could with my right foot. I passed by the people screaming and sitting down towards the grandmother. Kim Nam-woon collided with me and fell to the ground with a scream. At first glance, it seemed like I was saving the grandmother, but that wasn't what I was aiming for. Where was it? I looked around quickly. Somebody had fallen towards the grandmother due to the explosion. It was a kid crying in the middle of this hell. The kid who was holding the insect collecting net before. Excuse me a moment. I took the net from the child. Once I put my hand into the net, the chitin of a grasshopper reached my fingertips. I took one out and placed it in the kid's hands. Then I turned towards the people. Everybody stop. You can't live if you kill the grandmother. My voice was surprisingly clear due to the temporary silence after the explosion. One by one, people started looking at me. Let's say you kill the grandmother. What next? Their surprised faces looked good. Let me tell you a bit more. The grandmother's death will be recognized for what the Dakibai calls the first murder, and some time will be bought. Then what next? If what the Dakibai says is true, you each have to kill one thing. So who will you kill after the grandmother? Will you kill the person next to you? The people who thought about something retreated from each other. Horror was in their eyes. In fact, everyone knew. The grandmother was just the beginning. Kim Namwoon noticed the shaky atmosphere. Haha, what are you all worried about? Then kill him next. I figured that Kim Namwoon would say something like this. I cut him off with a slight wave of my hand. There is no need to gamble like that. There is a way for you to survive, even if you don't become a killer. What is it? The people became greatly agitated. Kim Namwoon's expression distorted. Have you forgotten? The scenario clear condition wasn't to kill a person. Most people were still puzzled, but a few people noticed something. That's right. From the beginning, the word person was never specified in the contents of the scenario. Kill one or more living things. In other words, any life was possible. A quick-witted person shouted at the collection net in my hand. Insects. The grasshoppers were jumping in the collection net. People's eyes were shining. I nodded. That's right, the insects. I put my hand into the net and took out a grasshopper. It was a chubby one that I saw earlier. Gee, give that to me. Quickly, one only. I just need one. I stepped back slowly as I looked at the approaching people. I was now facing the explosive madness that tried to kill the grandmother. Yet a smile emerged. Why, even in this breathtaking tension, why was my heart beating with joy? Would you like it? I waved the net like a trainer provoking an animal. Several impatient people leapt towards me. Then catch them. I smashed the grasshopper in my hand. 100 coins have been earned as additional compensation. At the same time, I threw the net in my other hand as hard as possible. It was towards the opposite side of the area where the grandmother and the crowd was gathered. This is crazy. The insects were released and jumped as hard as they could for freedom. People panicked as they saw the insects running around the carriage. While some people were staring blankly, the quick-witted pushed toward me. You son of a bitch. You better find them soon. There are only 3 minutes left. These words were a signal as people started to look everywhere among the subway seats like beasts who had lost their minds. I got it. The joy of those fortunate enough to obtain an insect, as well as the malicious attacks on them, caused the carriage to become chaotic. Hey, why did you do that? Couldn't you have just given them the insects? Looking back, I saw Kim Namwoon raising his body. I responded cautiously to Kim Namwoon, who was stretching his neck. There are 12 people remaining. There were 3 insects left in the collecting net. Kim Namwoon frowned for a moment before smiling broadly. 12 to 3. Yes, not all of them can survive anyway. So you threw that thing? Yes. Don't make me laugh. Tell me honestly, you just wanted to see this scene, didn't you? I recalled the Kim Namwoon that I knew from Ways of Survival. At this moment, I heard a message in my ears. Exclusive skill, character list is activated. Next, a window opened in front of my eyes. I still didn't know exactly what my attribute was, but I looked at the window in front of me. Character information. Name, Kim Namwoon. Age, 19. Constellation support, none. Private attribute, Chunabu. Exclusive skills, unusual adaptability LV. 3. Knife fighting LV. 1. Blackening LV. 1. Overall stats, stamina LV. 3. Strength LV. 4. Agility LV. 6. Magic power LV. 4. Overall rating. A Chunabu who is blackened by a special occasion. It is recommended that you don't get involved with him. Most of the Chunabu that appeared in Ways of Survival committed suicide because they couldn't endure the nightmare that had become real. However, the Chunabu before me, Kim Namwoon, was different. He was the delusion demon, Kim Namwoon. The young man, who later became known by this nickname, wasn't an ordinary Chuni. This young man had been waiting for the destruction of the world for a long time and adapted to this world at an unusual speed. Team up with me. How about it? That young man was now making an offer to me. The character Kim Namwoon has a favorable impression of you. Your understanding of the character Kim Namwoon has increased. My immediate survival was guaranteed if I held hands with Kim Namwoon. If I hadn't read Ways of Survival, my choice might have been a little different. I'm sorry, but I like to be alone. Really? It is regrettable. Kim Namwoon licked his lips lightly and stood close to me. Then can you step aside? I have something to do with that old lady behind you. Hearing his words, I looked back to see that the bleeding and collapsed grandmother was barely breathing. What do you want? Do you have to ask? You aren't catching the insects. Insects? Why would I catch that? Kim Namwoon laughed. I already have a caught insect in front of me. I could feel Kim Namwoon's murderous spirit. The character that had only existed in the novel was facing me with vivid madness. Therefore, I felt a little bit in awe. Kim Nem-woon was really the person I had imagined. The character Kim Nem-woon has a slight decrease in favorability. What are you looking at? Aren't you going to move aside quickly? It is tough. What? I won't move aside. Haha, are you now going to imitate the apostle of justice? Do you have multiple personalities? I didn't answer. The dark shadow slowly crept onto Kim Nem-woon's face, and his shining eyes were becoming cold. No, wait a minute. Did you throw the net over there to do this from the beginning? As I looked closely at this guy, old memories resurfaced. It turns out that you are the type of person I hate the most. All old bastards are the same. They were memories of all the times I had been frustrated by this brat during ways of survival. The character Kim Nem-woon despises you. What did you say? I considered the timing and lowered my head, avoiding the fist that flew before the words were even over. Oh, not bad. Despite knowing it was coming, I felt a sense of heat from above my head. It wasn't an ordinary punch. Blackening LV1. A dark aura rose from Kim Nem-woon's whole body. This was the exclusive skill of the Chunabyu attribute. It was rare to release a skill before the end of the first scenario, but Kim Nem-woon was already showing a skill. There was a reason why the main character had recruited him, despite his psychopath nature. After he hit it, my right shoulder spasmed. There was no way to win if I kept fighting this way. Should I use that now? I was calculating the time when I heard a message. Your understanding of the character Kim Nem-woon has increased. You are close to the conditions of use for the exclusive skill Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint LV. What was this? The conditions of use for the exclusive skill Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint LV. 1 have been reached. Kim Nem-woon's fist missed me and struck the ground. Haha, what? Haven't I become stronger? A faint fist mark was left on the ground. Kim Nem-woon was realizing his current strength little by little. The fist that could break a bone with a single blow kept hitting the ground. Kim Nem-woon was frustrated and couldn't control his temper. Why can't I hit you? Of course, he couldn't hit me. It was all thanks to my second skill. Exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint LV. 1 has been activated. As soon as this skill was activated, I was able to observe Kim Nem-woon's attack direction like I was reading his inner thoughts. For example, like this. Right side. I quickly moved away from the direction of the attack. Right eye. Then I quickly bent down and avoided the flying fist. You really are good at not being hit. It was unreasonable to counterattack because I was poor at sports, but I could at least avoid most of the attacks. Left thigh. This was enough to endure it. The important thing was to buy time. I avoided Kim Nem-woon's first and pointed at the clock in the air. There are 2 minutes left, kid. The distressed Kim Nem-woon alternated looking between me and the grandmother. Damn it. At the moment of choice, Kim Nem-woon's gaze was fixed on the grandmother's side. I was forced to grab the grandmother and roll away. If the grandmother died, Kim Nem-woon would clear the scenario. No matter what, I absolutely couldn't send this guy on to the next scenario. Haha, I knew you would move like that. As Kim Nem-woon took something out of his bag, I had an ominous feeling. A blade shone in the fluorescent light. It was a portable MacGyver knife. I had forgotten. This person was a die-hard military otaku. Swayek. There was a link between the technical skill knife fighting and the strengthening skill blackening. The direction that the blade was pointing was obvious. It was an attack that couldn't be avoided even if I knew the direction. So, I made a quick judgment. If I couldn't avoid the attack, it was better to be hit somewhere with minimal damage, if possible. The blade narrowly missed my heart and made a deep cut on my shoulder. It hurt. It really hurt. There was a searing pain in my skin. My vision shook, and it felt like death was approaching. The time remaining to the end of the scenario was 1 minute and 30 seconds. I glanced toward the grandmother. I was sorry for the grandmother, but now I really had to use that. I have one question for you. What? Do you think an insect egg is a living thing? I took out the body of the grasshopper I had killed earlier from my pocket. The plump egg sac was clearly abundant. There was the sound of something popping, and something fluid spilled out. The disgusting feeling spread over my hand as I heard a message. You have killed a living thing. 100 coins have been earned as additional compensation. You have killed a living thing. 100 coins have been earned as additional compensation. Multiple messages bombarded my ears. Kim Nem-woon frowned. Insect egg. What are you suddenly saying? Are you trying to waste time? I guess so. How would I know something like that? I was always sleeping in biology class. Kim Nem-woon looked at my bloody shoulder and laughed happily. But there is one thing I know for sure. Do you know what it is? What is it? You will die right now. Kim Nem-woon moved his Swiss knife before I could answer. It was an attack that was hard to avoid. A large number of coins has been acquired. Do you want to check the coin usage tips? I omitted the explanation that entered my ears. There was no need to listen when I already knew the contents. No, it is you who will die, I spat out while inwardly muttering something else. 2,700 coins have been invested into stamina. Stamina LV. 1 greater than stamina LV. 10. Your stamina level has increased dramatically. The durability of your body has greatly increased. Kim Nem-woon's knife penetrated toward my heart. To be exact, it looked like it was penetrating. My skin was like solid rock, and the only thing that remained on it was a scratch. Kim Nem-woon's eyes showed that he was astonished. How? I'll tell you the correct answer to my question. The answer is, an egg is a living thing. What? And in spawning season, grasshoppers lay more than 100 eggs at a time. Egg, living thing, 100. Unfortunately, the time left to understand the meaning of the information was too short for the schoolboy with a bad brain. What are you saying? It doesn't matter if you don't understand. There is 1 minute left. Now fear appeared on Kim Nem-woon's face. Die. The knife moved toward my neck. I didn't even bother defending against the attack. Was it because the area was more vulnerable than the chest? The wound was a little deeper than before, but it still didn't hurt much. 55 seconds, 50 seconds, 45 seconds. The knife kept leaving only scratches. Blood flowed, but the blade couldn't reach under the skin. There were 30 seconds left when Kim Nem-woon opened his mouth. He dropped the knife and knelt before me. Save me. 25 seconds. Save me. Please. Help me. Why should I? 20 seconds. People's lives are important. That's obvious. That is the rule of the old world. It is just as you said. A new world requires new laws. 10 seconds. I don't want to die. 5 seconds. Kim Nem-woon ran at me with a loud scream and aimed for my eye. The moment that the knife tried to dig at my retina. The given time has run out. There was a loud sound, and Kim Nem-woon's head exploded. Paid settlement will begin. Beginning with Kim Nem-woon, people's heads started exploding everywhere. 1, 2, 3, 4. The bursting heads were like fireworks announcing a new era. I watched the scene with a bit of joy, a bit of guilt, and a mysterious feeling. Why was I so calm at the sight in front of me? It was like I was looking at a novel. You have killed 124 living things. Kill history, 1 grasshopper, 123 grasshopper eggs. 6,200 coins have been acquired. The number of coins used for the stats level up is automatically subtracted. You have a total of 3,500 coins. The mass murderer achievement has been gained through excessive killing. My face could be seen on the darkened window of the carriage. It was a face I had never seen before, despite looking into the mirror countless times in my life. I wiped at the blood on my cheeks. The blood wasn't erased. It turned out to be blood on the window. There was a lurching feeling, and the train started to move again. It made the familiar train noise. Soon, light flooded in, and darkness was lifted from the windows. We had arrived at the surface ground section of Line 3 between Apgujeong and Oksu. Outside the window, the Han River and Seoul were revealed. Someone let out a moan. It was a moan which contained deep relief that they survived. However, it didn't take long for the meaning of that moan to change. The landscape outside the window was no longer the Seoul that they knew. Smoke and dust rose from the ruined city. The Han River bridges had collapsed. The Han River itself was red with the bodies of soldiers, while among the fallen buildings, a monster was trampling on a K1 tank like it was a toy. Main scenario number 1. Proof of value has ended. 300 coins have been acquired as a basic clearance reward. 100 coins have been reduced for the channel usage fee. Additional compensation settlement will begin. One world was destroyed, and a new world was born. And I was the only reader who knew the ending of this world. The subway stopped around halfway past Dongho Bridge. Oh my god. Several survivors stood up and looked at the scene taking place outside. The ruined Seoul and collapsed buildings. Monsters reminiscent of a giant snake were eating the wreckage of a fighter jet that had crashed into the Han River. What the hell? I recognized their identity at once. An ichthyosaur, a monster that was commonly called a sea serpent. It would later be classified as a grade 7 monster in the world of ways of survival. One of the ichthyosaurs looked in this direction. It is coming. People screamed with fright, but I just looked apathetically at the approaching ichthyosaur. These guys couldn't be a threat. The ichthyosaur circled around the bottom of Dongho Bridge and vanished into an air bubble. In the world of ways of survival, scenarios took precedence over anything else. As long as we were protected by the scenario, we wouldn't have to deal with such monsters straight away. At least for now. Compensation settlement is delayed due to an unexpected scenario check. Please wait. The compensation settlement should have started right now, but only an error message floated in the air. It was probably due to me. I looked down at Kim Nem-woon's body, which only had the torso remaining. According to the original ways of survival, Kim Nam-woon killed most of the people in this carriage and moved on to the next scenario. But I stopped it. If my thoughts were right, those who would be angry at Kim Nam-woon's death would appear. They were in the sky above. Due to the death of character Kim Nam-woon, 2 constellations show a faint hostility to you. Constellations. They were mysterious beings in ways of survival. They sat watching from the distant nebulas and were the masterminds of this tragedy. Once the constellation's preferences sign appeared, I realized that it was now starting in earnest. It was funny. A day ago, our positions were opposite. Now they were the ones watching me. The constellations have sponsored you 500 coins. If there were some constellations who disliked me, there would also be some who liked me. Either way, it was an uncomfortable situation. However, I couldn't do anything about them right now. It was my turn to be a clown. I picked up Kim Nam-woon's Swiss knife on the ground and thought, feel free to watch. You will end up paying the admission fee with your lives. Dokja SSI, are you okay? I looked up and saw Yusanga's face. Her shoulders were sagging. Blood covered her white blouse and there was a run in her stockings. There was no more of the Yusanga I knew. I held Yusanga's hand and said, I'm sorry, I couldn't save the grandmother. I looked down at the body of the grandmother, missing its head. I didn't know the name of the grandmother. In the future, many people would die in this manner. Yusanga looked at me with a complicated gaze. How is Dokja SSI so? Yes? It is nothing. I belatedly thought back to the previous scene. I had thrown the net in Yusanga's direction. I knew what she was thinking. It was just a coincidence. It won't happen twice. Yusanga nodded silently. She didn't know the truth, but she was smart. She knew what I meant. Someone lived because of my choice and someone else died. No matter who survived, I didn't deserve a thank you. The Dokibai appeared in the air. What on earth happened here? I was just watching the other carriages. There was a mixture of delight and surprise on the Dokibai's face. Twinkling stars floated over the Dokibai's head. I counted the number of stars. 1, 2, 3, 20, 21. 21 in total. It would be happy for 21 people to be connected to my channel. Haha, isn't this quite good? Gosh, thank you for your sponsorship. Constellations. Haha, everyone. Did you properly show off your value? The number of stars meant the number of constellations connected to the channel. 21 wasn't a lot, but it was a strange number for a beginner Dokibai. The number of survivors is quite high. The fellow in the next carriage was a nutter as well. It seems that things are quite interesting today. The Dokibai manipulated something in the air. A moment later, a list of survivors came up. Survivors from the 3434 train to Bulwang, carriage 3807, Kim Dokja, Lee Hyun-sung, Yusanga, Han Myung-go, and Lee Gil-young. A total of 5 survivors. 5 people. More people than I thought survived. I looked at the faces of the survivors one by one. Lee Hyun-sung had a good physique and excellent motor skills, so it was expected that he would survive. I even expected Yusanga to a certain extent. In addition, Lee Gil-young. If my guess was right, Lee Gil-young was the name of the boy standing next to me. The fluids from the crushed grasshopper was still on the boy's hands. It was the grasshopper I had squeezed. The boy was looking at his mother, who lost her head. The boy's mother had abandoned him to join in on killing the grandmother. The boy had just watched the whole thing from beginning to end. I hesitated for a moment before touching the boy's shoulder. The boy slowly turned his head, and in his eyes, I could see the fear of death that he encountered for the first time in his life. Unavoidable instincts. This boy wasn't grieving his mother's death. He was just afraid of his own death. It was natural. It was human. Do you want to live? The boy's eyes shook anxiously. His body trembled with a force that couldn't be resisted. Then little by little, the boy's head moved. Then let's go together. Lee Gil-young moved slowly and came close to my legs. Yusanga was watching me with an impressed expression. I unintentionally caused another misunderstanding. In fact, it was meant to be seen. But the target wasn't Yusanga. The constellations have sponsored you 200 coins. I couldn't help thinking that it was a low move. But I also wanted to live. Given the upcoming major events, it was essential to draw the attention of the constellations right now. Will you release us now? Didn't you get what you wanted? Han Myung-go in a torn shirt shouted from half a dozen steps away. Department head Han Myung-go. He was a lucky human. But I couldn't help wondering, why was Han Myung-go riding the subway when he had so much money? This was the man who had shown off a new S-Class Mercedes-Benz not long ago. Haven't you seen outside? Do you really want to go out there? The Dokibai chuckled. It is somehow admirable. In fact, I didn't expect much from this carriage, but you managed to pass the first scenario. This proves that bugs deserve to survive. His words made us realize our position. Maybe we were like grasshoppers in his eyes. Now, shouldn't there be a reward for overcoming the hardships? As a reward for the first scenario, you are entitled to the sponsorship of the constellations. Why? How about it? Aren't you looking forward to it? You are all unenthusiastic. This is really a big deal. The reaction was natural. I was the only one here who knew what constellation or sponsorship was. The sponsorship of the constellations. The meaning was obvious. One of the key events of Ways of Survival, sponsor selection, was about to begin. Everybody has confused expressions. I can easily tell you. Right now, you are incredibly weak. If you are thrown into the scenarios that will take place, you will be killed when you meet a weak ground rat, let alone a croc. But kindly, there are some great people in the universe who pity you and would like to sponsor you. Do you understand what I am saying? Lee Hyun-sung finally couldn't stand it anymore and opened his mouth. What are you saying? Who is sponsoring whom? My words are just entering dirty ears. Isn't there an old saying in South Korea? It is better to see it once than listen 100 times. So experience it directly. Well, the less fortunate ones might not get the chance. I was tense. From now on, a good choice here would make my survival in the future easier. Dokja SSI. Two strange choices suddenly appeared in front of me. I don't know even if you ask me. This was naturally a lie to avoid suspicions. By the way, there were two choices. Yu Sangha was quite lucky. Do it comfortably. Think of it as an aptitude test. Aptitude test. Nobody knows what the situation is anyway. Why not do it comfortably? I understand. Yu Sangha closed her mouth and started staring into space. It was a profound expression, as if she had encountered something curious. The others suddenly became silent. Everyone was reading the options in front of them. I also had my own choices to look at. Please select your sponsor. Your chosen sponsor will be your strong supporter. There were 4 choices like a riddle. It meant there were 4 constellations that wanted to turn me into their incarnation. 4 choices wasn't small considering that the protagonist of Ways of Survival received 5 options the first time. The constellations never revealed their true name. Therefore, all contractors must infer the identity of the constellations by words such as abyssal, demonic, and garden. Of course, this puzzle was nothing to me, the sole reader of Ways of Survival. Let's see. First, the abyssal black flame dragon. According to my memory, this constellation was a powerful entity that led the group of constellations called the Black Cloud. I forgot his real name, but I remember it was a very long name. The advantage of this constellation was that the contractor could receive a very strong attack power. In the early days when stamina and strength were in urgent need, there was no constellation as strong as the abyssal dark flame dragon. Of course, that was limited to the beginning. As the power of this constellation was more frequently used, the mind became corrupted and the contractor would become a mad murderer. This constellation usually sponsored the people with the Chuni attribute. I didn't know why the constellation picked me. I felt uncomfortable and excluded this guy. The second one, the demon-like Judge of Fire. I can't believe I was actually seeing this option. Somehow, the strong emotions I felt were enormous. At first glance, the name was overflowing with evil. But this was actually a trap for the wicked. The demon-like actually meant not a demon. Then the words fire and judge were added. A being who wasn't a demon and who made judgments through fire. Paradoxically, the master of this constellation was an angel. If I recalled corrected, it was Archangel Uriel. In fact, I remembered this because someone in the novel picked this constellation as a sponsor. It was a pretty decent choice. This was pending. The constellations of absolute good imposed ridiculous constraints if you wanted to use their enormous power. The third, secretive plotter. It was the first time that I, the sole reader of Ways of Survival, had seen this choice. This name might have been mentioned in passing, but I didn't know it right now. If I could read Ways of Survival more thoroughly, then I might get a feel of the constellation. But I was certain that the owner of this constellation wasn't a very strong entity. Apart from the obvious modifier, there wasn't one proper noun. Secretive plotter, it was too simple for a constellation. This one was also pending. Finally, there was Prisoner of the Golden Headband. My heart jumped the moment I saw the 4th option. I didn't expect this constellation so early. I doubted my eyes several times, but it was unmistakably Prisoner of the Golden Headband. At first glance, this name gave off a negative image due to the word prisoner. But you had to pay attention to Golden Headband. Golden Headband, the smallest prison in the world. It was a hint that anyone would recognize if they enjoyed reading Journey to the West as a child. There was only one prisoner who was held captive by the Golden Headband in the journey from east to west. The master of the Mountain of Flowers and Fruit, who lived in suffering due to the shackle on his head. The handsome monkey king with the golden gaze, fiery eyes. The great sage, the equal of heaven, Sun Wukong. Among the characters that appeared in the novel, there was one supported by Sun Wukong, a wondrous power that could sweep through hundreds of incarnations and to kill thoughts with one lightning strike. The author had described this part with a lot of energy, so my memory of it was clear. I didn't know why such a powerful constellation was showing me interest, but if I became the incarnation of the great sage, the equal of heaven, I would be able to survive in this new world more easily than anyone else. But I quickly looked at the door connected to the carriage in front. Beyond that door, he was looking at the selection screen like me. If I chose the great sage, the equal of heaven, could I win against him? Time was running out. I breathed lightly and looked through my options. My worries didn't last long. Sponsor selection has ended. I took a deep breath as I watched the messages floating in the air. Some constellations are greatly affected by your choice. Yes, it was starting now. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon is greatly displeased at your choice. The constellations belonging to Black Cloud are shaken by the anger of the Abyssal Black Flame Dragon. You won't be sponsored by any of the Black Cloud constellations for a while. I wasn't surprised because it was an expected message. The constellation demon-like Judge of Fire is disappointed in you. She will persistently monitor your justice in the future. In the case of Archangel Uriel, it was just disappointment. In the first place, the constellations of absolute good would rarely hate someone unless they committed a great injustice. The constellation's secretive plotter is interested in your choice. 200 coins have been sponsored. The secretive plotter's case was unexpected. Given the characteristics of the name, maybe he valued my caution. The constellation Prisoner of the Golden Headband is interested in your choice. And the great sage, the equal of heaven. I was concerned. Did I make the right choice? I didn't know. Maybe I had lost the tremendous opportunity right in front of me. You haven't selected a sponsor, but choosing a certain constellation meant being limited by that possibility. The sponsor contract was never a fair deal. I would survive, but I wouldn't survive by being their toys. And if my expectations were right, there was a way to become strong without a constellation. Maybe it was a way to become stronger than the incarnation of the strongest sponsor. The Dokibai's crescent moon eyes stayed on me for a moment. Now, everyone has finished the selection. Rest here for a while. I have to go prepare the next scenario. I'll see you in 10 minutes. After the sponsor selection finished, the Dokibai disappeared. He told us to rest, but these 10 minutes were really crucial. In 10 minutes, I needed to sort out this situation and prepare for the following scenarios. I tried to recall my abilities in my head. Character list and omniscient reader's viewpoint. I didn't know the precise use yet, but I had a general sense of these skills. This will work somehow. Let's all gather together. The survivors gathered at my words. The first one to reach out a hand was Lee Hyun-sung. Hello, I am Lee Hyun-sung. Kim Dokja, nice to meet you. Although I don't know if these words suit the situation. You can't contact your unit. Yes, the grip around my hand was considerable, as expected from the tanker that appeared in the early stages of Ways of Survival. I must take Lee Hyun-sung with me. He might not look like much now, but Lee Hyun-sung was an increasingly important figure in the latter parts of Ways of Survival. Oh, Dokja SSI. Yes, I wanted to thank you. If it wasn't for Dokja SSI, we would all be dead. No, that isn't the case. Even if I had lived, I would have been able to live as a person. Thank you very much. Lee Hyun-sung bowed deeply. My mind was a bit complicated. In fact, Lee Hyun-sung would have survived even if I didn't do anything. Then somebody grabbed my shoulder. Haha, our contractor did one big thing. Dokja SSI, do you know my name? I could tell who it was without looking back. I took the hand off my shoulder and said, I know, Han Myungo SSI. Shouldn't you call me department head? Han Myungo was still trying to use his position in this situation. This isn't the company. Huh? Look at this. Are you planning to not go work now? Where did you learn your basic etiquette? Once I saw Han Myungo's angry face, I once again realized that the world I knew was over. The man in front of me was a predator of the world before the scenario began. And I was merely a prey to the predator. It was certainly like that. No matter how I think about it, your actions were too much. Yes, if you had the insects, then you should have tipped me off. Why would you throw them like that? Minisoft, do you think the company still exists when the end has come? Han Myungo's face was white and stricken. I turned my eyes towards the other people. Since I was already saying it, I should make it stick. Han Myungo SSI isn't the only problem. Everyone, you need to wake up. As the Dokibai said, this isn't a joke. I think you should have all roughly noticed the situation. Exclusive skills in the attributes window. A game-like interface. Is there anyone who still hasn't caught on to facts? Indeed, no one raised their hand. South Korea was easy. Due to the high penetration rate of smartphones, there wasn't one person who hadn't played a RPG game. Even if they didn't play a game, they would have read a fantasy novel at least once. Lee Hyun-sung sighed. This is like a novel I was reading while standing on duty, but I still can't feel it. This really isn't a dream. This is reality. My stern answer caused Lee Hyun-sung's eyes to slightly change. The character Lee Hyun-sung feels a faint trust in you. Your understanding of the character Lee Hyun-sung has increased. Lee Hyun-sung nodded. It is good that you are certain. Then what do we do now? Dr. SSI, do you have an opinion? We have to go, I answered without hesitation. It seemed everyone still hadn't woken up. Then how long we will stay here? In fact, my argument didn't make much sense. Outside was a heaven of monsters. But I knew, right now, we have to get out of here. Have you thought about your parents? Do you think your parents are safe in this mess? Yu Sanga cried out desperately. Indeed, Confucianism was still strong in South Korea. I have to go to my base, but it seems dangerous to move in this situation. There was also the warning. Shit, you all go by yourselves. I'm not going. I'm not going outside. I didn't care about Han Myung-go, but the problem was Lee Hyun-sung. I had to take Lee Hyun-sung with me no matter what. The thick iron plate made a loud sound. The iron door to carriage 3707 was slightly distorted. What? Han Myung-go's cry was ignored as the iron door made a deafening sound again. Someone was trying to break the door from beyond it. This was an unexpected situation, so I had to think. Was it the next scenario? No, the Dokibai hadn't come back yet. Then, my brain moved quickly. Small hairs stood up and a short shiver struck my body. That guy. What? Everybody stop it. Han Myung-go shouted and moved towards the door. Lee Hyun-sung moved towards it as well, but I stopped him. You can't stop it. Huh? We have to go. I looked at the iron door with heavy eyes. Huh? But, if we don't go now, the only survivor of carriage 3707. I was well aware of who was beyond the iron door. We will all die before the next scenario arrives. Yes, that guy was finally coming. The real protagonist of this story. That will be all for now. I hope you find this story interesting. Leave a like, subscribe, and enable notifications so you won't miss the next part of this story. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.